What are some deep, thought-provoking questions to ask someone to know them better?
One question I like to ask people is, if you had all the resources, time, and land available to build whatever you want, a house, a park, a monument, what would you build? I'm no architect nor psychologist, and I know it kind of sounds like an interview question, but I believe it can trigger a very interesting discussion with that person. And you can keep asking about the reasons and details afterwards. That question is something I came up while I was dating my last partner. When I asked her that question, she started talking about how she would imagined her dream house, full of large windows and mosaics, with a colorful garden, and so. From there, it turned into a surprisingly long and pleasant conversation.
A few thought-provoking questions that I would ask someone. What are you looking forward to this week? Should everyone on the planet be striving toward a common goal? If so, what would that be? If you could teach the entire world just one concept, what would it be? What concept do you think could have the most significant positive impact on humanity?
At the end of Pete Holmes' podcast You Made It Weird, he always asks what's the hardest you've laughed? Doesn't have to be the literal hardest, but whatever pops in their head first. I find that question always gets a good conversation going. Usually shows who's important to them, what's important, etc.
Response: the hardest I've laughed is when I was 17 and my friends spent the night at my house. We didn't sleep at all. We were so exhausted the next day that during breakfast we made toast and I couldn't get the damn toaster to fit back in the refrigerator. I called my friend over to help me and we spent a good 5 minutes trying to understand 1, how it fit before without moving anything, and 2, how to get it in without adjusting the shelves. Then, at one point, I said, "Wait, the toaster doesn't go in the fridge." We were on the floor the next moment, laughing hysterically at how absurd the past 5 minutes were and at how we were so sleep-deprived we didn't even realize it.
Response: my friends and I were stoned out of our minds. We parked in the alley behind his house. He lived with his parents at the time. We decided to all walk in a line, doing the Ric Flair taunt/walk. We did so up the side of the garage that leads into the backyard. We didn't realize his parents and their friends were all in the backyard. Like a cartoon, the first person to pass the end of the garage and notice the party taking place stopped, and the rest of us bumped into the person ahead of him. His parents' friends were startled, and I remember my buddy's mom exclaiming, "Oh effing boy!" We sprint into the house skipping all formalities, went to the basement where our headquarters were, and I remember just laying on the floor vibrating from laughter and the inability to move. 'Twas a good time.
Depends on why I'm trying to get to know them in the first place. Once when my roommate and I were searching for a third roommate for our new apartment, the first question we asked applicants was, "Who's your favorite Pokemon?" It caught a lot of people off guard and the answer doesn't really matter that much, but the applicants' reaction to the question helped us filter through which ones had generally similar interests to us.
Why is your favorite book/movie/game your favorite? Everybody's got a favorite, blank. But asking them what they love about it is a great way to learn more about their interests and to learn more about them as a person.
Response: personally, I prefer asking people what are you reading lately, or watching, instead of what's your favorite, because I feel like what's your favorite puts people on the spot. If I don't know that they are readers, I might phrase it as have you read anything interesting lately? Alternatively, I might say something like I've been looking for something, funny or scary or whatever, to read. Any suggestions? Another reading related is what genre do you typically read?
Response: I actually hate this question, because I generally don't have a favorite X. What I have is a bunch of says that I love, and my favorite at any moment depends on what's going on at that particular moment, in my head, around me, etc. For example, the Beatles are on my list of favorite bands, but when I need light background music while I'm reading, they're definitely not my favorite. So maybe if I were asked this question, it would reveal a lot about me, and so it's a good question in this context. But when someone asks me, out of the blue, what's your favorite food, they tend to get annoyed when I try to give them this nuanced answer. So I've grown to hate the question in general.
Favorite childhood memory: what's something you wish was socially acceptable? What weird habits did you have as a kid? For example, I would always hold the jug upside down when pouring milk, Do you believe there are other life forms in the universe? What fictional character do you relate to the most? If time was frozen for 8 hours right now and you could still move around freely, what would you do? What superpower would you want and why? What makes you feel at peace? For example, you can visibly see the stress melt off of me once I'm out of the city. What's a hobby you've always wanted to pick up, but haven't? Is there a useless skill you have/want to learn? Anything from blacksmithing to learning dead languages. What's your guilty pleasure show/music? If you could have one exist in real life, would you choose dragons or magic? Or substitute your own choices? What song is playing in the back of your head? What's something that freaks you out for no good reason? For example, I fucking hate feet. Like, what other animal has feet like this? They are low-key useless and so weird. I hate them. What's a fact that makes people wonder why you know that? Were you a Greek mythology kid, or an Egypt kid? Dream vacation. If you didn't live here, where would you want to live? If you changed your name, what would it be?
What's the first thing you think of when you wake up most days? How do you handle your anger? How long do you think you'll live?
Super late to this, but oh well. After getting to know someone a little and we're kind of past all the general small talk, weather, family, light interests, etc., and I see the conversation dying down a little, I like asking how the other person feels about silence in conversation. Most people are a little taken aback, but it's nice to kind of set up how silence is between the two of you. Some people don't like it, and some people are very comfortable with it. Plus, it minimizes the amount of, "Oh boy, it's sorta quiet, should I say something?" thoughts that may arise later if you know what they're comfortable with. It can also be sort of telling of their approach to life/relationships, and their personality as well.
What is your mother's maiden name? What's the name of the street you grew up on? What was your first pet's name? What are the 3 digits on the back of your debit card?
The other day I was making notes of things to ask someone I've just met to get to know them better, and this is what I came up with. I was not sober when I was writing all this down. What's favorite? Sound, smell, pizza topping, memory from being a teenager, game, author, film, cheese, picture, wine, TV show from being a kid, joke, artist, mythology, tree, place to be, shade of green, pattern for socks, random trivia thing you know, song by The Cure, thing about frogs, did you like uni, subject on mastermind, most relaxed, who's had biggest influence, what superpower would your friends give you, who would you have a tea party with, last time cried, what can nerd out most passionately about, what was your childhood teddy bear called, why do you like your best friend, ice cream or lollies, yellow or red, rivers or lakes, sunrise or sunset, Chandler or Joey.
What are you thinking right now? I remember my dad used to ask this to me when I was a kid. I used to daydream in the car when he'd drive all around Europe. I was about 6 years old, and really, those were the best of times. It's really nice to use when you have nothing else to say, and it just gives a nice glimpse into what the other person really is thinking.
Response: my boyfriend and I do this all the time, when we're sitting together quietly doing separate things. It's also really good for gauging how the other is doing, and how they're truly feeling at that moment.
This isn't so much a question, but a little game you can play that can help break the ice and let you know how well you mesh together. If you're at a place like a bar or restaurant, look around the room and try to come up with backstories for other people there. It can be a lot of fun and take some of the pressure off, while getting you two talking to each other and getting a feel for each other's sense of humor/personality. It can tell you a lot about a person. For example, I played this while out on a date with this girl, and she managed to take all the fun out the game by being ridiculously cruel in all her assumptions for no real reason at all. It felt like she was projecting issues she had onto these people. Like, one guy was sitting at the bar alone, could have been waiting for someone, you never know, but because he was alone he was a fucking loser with no friends that hates his life. Completely killed the mood, but at least gave me a heads up as to what type of person she was.
Response: people watching is great. You can really gauge how good a person's emotional intelligence is and their ability to empathize, which tells you a lot about a person.
One time I was part of a committee interviewing kids to be camp counselors, and I asked one kid, if you could pull out a string of hankies from your ear, what color would they be? that kid spent a whole 10 minutes describing each individual ear hanky.
Thank you for watching to the end of the video. Be sure to like, subscribe and leave a comment if you want to support the channel and see more content just like this. See you next time.